there, it's Lezli. Thanks for joining us for our On the Yard edition of Impolite Conversation, where we explore race, culture, and societal issues through the lens of HBCU students. On the Yard happens every Friday. This is part 2 of IDE Impolite Conversation season finale. We're joined by 2 previous guests who spoke with us earlier in the season.
Hi everyone, it's Nava. Thank you for joining us for On the Yard edition of Impolite Conversation. We are excited to be welcoming back Divine.
Hi everybody, my name is Divine Linus. I am a sophomore mathematics major with a minor in neuroscience from Abuja, Nigeria, and I currently attend Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia.
Awesome. Divine, the last 9 months have been quite the whirlwind roller coaster, mentally, emotionally, throughout the world, within the United States, everywhere. And within the United States specifically, we are nowhere close to seeing the end of this period in time. So the last time we spoke, you discussed with Nava and my mom the challenges and nuances of being a Nigerian undergrad at Morehouse, navigating and understanding the lives of Black Americans, and then experiencing racism in the US. I'm not exactly sure where you are living right now. If you could update us on that. Because of COVID, I know a lot of people have been displaced. So first, let's start there.
Currently, I stay downtown Atlanta. I stay on Georgia State campus. It's a student campus residence downtown. That's where I've been staying since August, since the beginning of the fall semester.
You've changed your major since the last time we chatted, right?
Yes, correct.
So what was the impetus for that change?
I was so much interested in mathematics and in certain problem solving and data analytics and trying to use numbers to solve problems. Initially, I thought it was something I could do with a CS degree, with a degree in programming. But during my stay at Morehouse, with the teachers and the Department of Computer Science, I realized that I couldn't really do what I really love in the CS department. But I decided to give it a try at the mathematics department. So that's what's prompted my change from computer science to math. I did that in the beginning of the fall semester. I think it was in July, a month before the beginning of the fall semester. I reached out to my departmental chair for some advice and some counseling. And because I added a new minor, neuroscience, we decided to make a spreadsheet of how I'm going to be taking my courses, the number of courses I need to take to graduate with a math degree and with a neuroscience minor. So I then made a plan of how many courses and how many credits I was going to be taking every semester to graduate on time.
So you're a neuroscience minor?
Correct.
Oh, that's interesting. Can you tell us why you decided to minor in neuroscience?
Neuroscience at its best form, or in the simplest definition, it's talking about mind and brain, the coordination between your hand and your mind, or between your hand and your brain. And it's just basically talking about how our brain functions in relation to our body and what prompts us to do whatever we do because of the action of our brain. So what prompted me to take a minor in neuroscience was I just really love to see or to understand or to go and research into how things work, how the people act the way they act, what happens to people who suffer from some mental illnesses or from some mental decapacitation, or people who suffer from PTSD or from epilepsy. So it prompted me to want to go and research and find all those things. And also, I wanted to go to medical school sometime in the future. So it's given me an opportunity to take some of the pre-med requisites, including biology, chemistry, physics, and biochemistry, and some of the pre-med classes that I might need to go to medical school. So it's maintaining a balance between mathematics, which I could work maybe in the financial industry, capital markets, sales and trading, or global analysis, and also go to medical school and becoming a neuropsychologist, neurosurgeon, maybe.
That sounds exciting.
That's interesting to hear how you're using your math degree in tandem with your neuroscience minor. COVID-19 has been the catalyst for so many events that have occurred within the US, around the globe, such as protests and marching for Black lives and other demonstrations of civil unrest. And social media specifically has been the stage for many of those events that have occurred during COVID-19, and some of which have been events such as the Versus events. Some actually have resulted in becoming super spreader events in places like Georgia, where you are right now. How have, if any, these occurrences affected or changed your perspective?
I feel like the COVID-19 has really changed a lot. A lot of lives have been changed. A lot of experiences has been changed. But to me personally, I feel like it has really stopped me from doing all the things I want to do. I had tried to work off campus or try to, get some employment off campus while I wait for the next semester. And due to the COVID-19, a lot of hiring companies were now like, we don't hire no more because of COVID-19. A lot of opportunities that usually used to be open during the normal season. But right now, everything just seems so difficult and seems, I don't know how to put it, but it just seems different nowadays. The COVID hasn't really, I would say in Georgia, with my experience staying in Georgia, I feel like people in Georgia don't really take it as much seriously as people in other states. So when it comes in terms of social life, I feel like I didn't really have that much of a difference because I do go to places I usually go to, with a mask, of course, on. And the same thing I usually do before, I still do them now. So socially, it's still the same. But economically or financially, there has been a major difference. So these are the ways that COVID has impacted.
That must be hard. And then also, you're a sophomore, right?
Yes.
You're a second year? So are the majority of your friends in Atlanta or are they back home?
Oh, they're back home. They're back home. A couple of my friends are actually in Georgia, but not like in Atlanta. I think they're like 50 miles away from Atlanta. Most of the times, they don't really have the opportunity to come down to Atlanta, and they don't really have the opportunity for their friends to come over to visit them because some of them, their parents are very, very COVID conscious. They'll be like, I don't want you to go out. I don't want someone coming to see you because you don't know if the person has been in quarantine and all the other stuff. And a lot of my friends are also outside of Georgia. So it's just basically me and myself.
So even though you're able to go to the same places and do the same things, the people that you would be socializing with, you don't get to see them.
Yes, correct. Definitely. When it comes to like going to the gym, I could do that. I don't need my friends to go to the gym. Or if I try to go to parties, I really don't need them. I could just go alone or go to the store or maybe go to the library, public library downtown. I could do those things without.
Yeah.
Is the library on Clark's campus still open to students? Do you know? Because you mentioned going to the library. I don't know if that's the one you meant you go to.
No, I go to the one in Georgia State. There's a public library on Georgia State campus. I think it's the urban library. So I go there. I don't go to the one in Clark Atlanta.
And just to clarify, the student housing, that doesn't belong to Georgia State, right? Is that like those student housing situations where anyone from any college can live there?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's like walking distance from Georgia State and a lot of the things that they have, like their library and things like that.
We're directly opposite the Georgia State cafeteria. And it's open to not just students, but also married people, people who are employed, and business people. So it's open to everybody generally.
How has that transition been of just having to move from being on campus, living on campus, coming from home, and now within 6 months having to figure out a whole new situation basically on your own? Because like you said, most of your friends have moved back home there, which is obviously not as accessible for you. And now having to, I'm not sure if you knew your roommate before moving in, but just having to do all of that within a very quick turnaround time.
It has been a lot. I will put it that way. It has actually been a lot because as of yesterday, my friend and I was discussing about how being on campus was super easy, like super easy. You don't have to worry about nothing. You just go to the cafeteria, your food, you come back to your room, you go to the library, you go to class. But staying alone, you're basically staying as a graduate, like, how you graduate college and you have to figure out your life yourself. It's basically that way. It's giving you the experience of what it means or what it'd be like after college, you have to be responsible for your rent. You have to be responsible for your bills, your electricity, your water bills. And for someone like me who have a car, I have to be responsible for my monthly insurance. I have to be responsible for parking. There's so many other things you have to be responsible for, and you have to think about this. You have to coordinate this. You have to plan this, because staying alone, and also in terms of food, you have to, if you don't know how to cook, you're going to spend a lot. So you have to know how to maintain or provide your own meal plan and how to coordinate your life generally. And it's something that I never got used to, because first year I spent it on campus. During the COVID-19 break, I spent it with a family. So I left the family and had rented an apartment where I was staying, I think, during my internship. And after my internship, I still remained in the apartment. The great thing is that my scholarship actually helped me to pay for my rent. So since I was on campus, the money I could have used for my room and board was sent to me in form of refund, which I used to pay for my apartment. And that just ended, I think, in October or November. So the rest of the months, I had to figure out how to pay it by myself, how to get a job, how to pay it by myself. Because once you sign a lease, you cannot, even if you're not staying there, even though I go back to campus, you still have to pay for those months. And the lease I signed was for like a year. So I had to find somebody who could sublease for me while I go back on campus next semester. And staying alone without anybody, getting used to, other people. Like, okay, so when I was on campus, I never had experience of staying with a white roommate because, Morehouse is the HBCU, but here I have white roommates. So, getting used to the whole life of America generally.
One of the things I was curious about is I know the last time we had spoken, Morehouse at the time, as you're an international student, Morehouse was supposed to be like making accommodations for international students to stay on campus. I know at Spelman, and I think at Morehouse it's the same way, the first 2 years you have to live on campus. So there's no sort of expectation like, okay, I have to worry about getting an apartment my sophomore year. Like my first 2 years, things are just established for me. And then as an international student, I know you were expecting to stay on campus. It seems like there are all these barriers because now you have to figure out your financial situation and no one's hiring because of COVID. So these opportunities where you would be able to make extra money, like having a job off campus, that is so difficult. I guess at this point, you've already signed a 1-year lease, because I know that in the spring, at least Spelman has put in interest. You can submit interest if you want to stay on campus for the spring semester. Do you have friends that are thinking about coming back in the spring?
Yes. So basically, I think Morehouse has this 1-year policy for living on campus. And I think that just applies to freshmen, first year students. I think once you're a sophomore, I don't think you necessarily have to be on campus. And with the COVID-19 going on right now, a lot of people don't want to come back to campus because, number one, it's a lot of cost being on campus, paying about $5,000 to $6,000 for the semester when you can basically stay back home in your parents' house and not worry about the additional fee. And Morehouse has opened the campus up to about, I think, 1,200 students who would want to show interest to be on campus. But currently, according to what I heard, not up to 700 students have applied to be on campus. So it's just like basically half of how many Morehouse wants to be on campus have showed interest to be on campus. So, and I feel like it all comes down to the fact that some people, the parents are still cautious of the fact that they're going to be alone in another state and with the pandemic and everything going on. They're not really sure if Morehouse has provided the full coverage for students during this pandemic. And trust me, I know Morehouse has, like with a lot of things going on right now and the meetings we've been having, because I'm going to be an RA on campus next semester, hopefully. There are a lot of plans that have been made for students who would want to return back on campus. But students and parents are still skeptical of the fact that, coming back to campus, with Atlanta right now, that people don't really wear masks and everything going on right now. They've been hearing about Georgia. Everyone's doing whatever they want to do. People be like, I don't know, can I still send my child to go over there? And especially for freshmen who are like 17, 18, their parents be like, this is the first time my child is going off to college. Can he handle this? It would be better for him to just stay back home and I want to worry about the room and board costs. But a couple of my friends have told me they would want to come back on campus next semester. I already found somebody who would be taking over my lease when I go back on campus.
That's great to hear. Yeah.
Especially in this climate and everything. I know there are a lot of people who are very skeptical about, I don't know who I'm going to be living with. I don't know how you've been living, but that's very good. So, as we are officially in the holiday season, I know that many of my friends, as well as extended family, have been unable to celebrate in the manner that they usually do. I know right now you're still in the US, but overall, how has COVID-19 impacted your holiday season with your family, just overall?
Do you normally go home for Christmas? Did you go home freshman year?
No, I didn't. I didn't go back home. Because I came to the United States in August of 2019. So the December of 2019, during Christmas of that year, I didn't want to go back home because I just left home like 4 months ago. So I didn't want to go back home. And we just had like a video call, just like how we have right now with my family, my siblings and other relatives. So we just like talk and really have fun. I had another family in Georgia that I go to visit during the holiday season. So last year I went to visit them and I'll be going back to visit them this year again. So that's where I will spend, the physical bonding and interaction that I usually have with my family. That's where I have it with them. But my family back home in Nigeria, I usually have like video call with them. But it's just basically the same thing as of last year.
I have a quick question. What about the other international students at Morehouse? The international student community that you've made there? Where are they?
I know a couple of students who went back home, those who were from the Bahamas. But some of the students, especially the ones from Ethiopia and Kenya, some of them are actually in the United States, but I think they're in different cities and different states in the US. I know one of them is in Wisconsin, the other one is, I think, in DC, and some of them are actually in Georgia. I met one of them last week. He's from Ethiopia. He has an apartment off campus as well. I think there's an apartment he got right next to Morehouse, around Morehouse community. So he stays there. Some of them stayed with family friends in different states. Some of them like went to visit some of the friends in another state. So yeah, they're all over. Just few of them actually went back home, especially the ones from the Bahamas and nearby countries to the US.
Do you feel isolated?
Not really. Not really.
That's good.
Some of my friends actually came to stay with me. I had some Nigerian friends who study in different states. I have some friends who study at Fix University. Some study at Spelman College. Some of them study at different schools. Due to the COVID-19 and due to the break, some of them had to, take a flight to come stay with me in Atlanta. So I have about, 3 to 4 friends around that I go stay with who are also from Nigeria. There are 2 of my friends who came all the way from Nigeria to study here. They came yesterday from Nigeria. So we're just catching up with, everything going on in Nigeria because their flight came to Atlanta yesterday. We went to pick them from the airport and we've been all chatting and talking about how US is so good and how, Nigeria and other things. So.
And they're studying in Atlanta?
No, one of them is studying in Florida, Edward Waters College. The other one is studying in Alabama, Spelman College.
Oh, okay. And they're flight connected here?
Yes. And they'll be staying here before the spring semester, which starts in January. So for some of them, they start January 13. Some of them start January 15. So they'll be here for the holidays and the break till January, and they have to go.
So when does Morehouse's spring semester start? So because I know that there have been a lot of changes, specifically with Spelman. We don't start school until February.
Oh, same with Morehouse. We don't start classes till February. I think February 2nd. Yeah.
Looking towards the future, as there's only a few days left until Christmas and then only a couple weeks until the new year, if that. Do you have any resolutions or hopes for 2021?
I just hope 2021 is better than 2020. I'm just going to say. I'm just going to put it that way. I hope it's way better than 2020. And I hope the COVID it's not going to be as bad as it is in 2020. And with the new vaccine that is out, I hope there's going to be some improvement. And there could be the possibilities of everybody going back to their normal lives in 2021. And because right now I'm hearing some internships is going to be virtual next, summer. And I'm still worried about that because I didn't really make the most out of my internship last year. So I didn't want my internship again to be virtual next summer. So I would really prefer if everything goes back to normal before the summer and we have the opportunity to be in person for some of our internships or employments or, other activities. I hope to study abroad because I plan to study abroad my junior year, so maybe the fall of 2021.
Where do you want to study abroad?
In England, in Scotland. I also hope to see my parents because my visa is going to be expiring in June of 2021. So I'm hoping to go back home because once your visa is expired, you have to go back home to renew your visa again. And there's possibilities of people not getting their visa renewed when they go back home.
Oh, goodness. You can't do that at the embassy? What's that about? You can't do that at the embassy? Why can't you do that at the embassy?
No, you can't. I mean, you can. I mean, a lot of people actually try to do it, but you can't do it. You have to go, I think you have to go back home or you have to go to Canada to do it.
The people who work at the embassy and the consulate, they work for the Nigerian government. Why do they have to do it in Nigeria? That's so, students don't have money to travel back and forth like that. It's cost prohibitive.
Exactly. And a lot of students actually do it in Canada. Like almost all the students I know actually do it in Canada. But for some of us who, we just want to go back home because it's giving us an opportunity to see family and friends back home before coming back again to the United States. But usually they usually do the Dropbox thing. So how it normally works before is you just fill an application and then you attach your visa documents and everything. And I think you fax it or you mail it to them. And then they process your renewal and then they send it back to you. But due to the high number of students who drop out of school to work in the United States, the broken immigration rules and everything going on right now, a lot of international students, especially from Africa, when they come here, they wouldn't go back to school. They just want to make money. They want to live life. They want to do a lot of things in the United States because the US is a land of opportunities for them.
Start a business.
Exactly. So they restricted the rules and make it a little bit tight right now. You have to go back and have an interview and have something where you have to see you and ask you questions. So, and I know a couple of people who went back home to do it, but they got denied.
Yeah, that is quite interesting. Don't we love the government for that? Making everything more difficult than it really needs to be. So, Divine, this is our last question. Since you are a former guest, you know that we usually will ask our guests, where will they be eating on their last night on Earth?
Wait, before you ask that question, I want to ask him something. What holidays are you celebrating during this time?
Christmas and New Year's.
So during Christmas, what is like your one go-to meal that is made by a family member that you're like, I need to have this?
Okay, I call it the goat pepper soup. It's like using the goat meat to make like very spicy dish, like very hot. Usually make that during the holidays, and because we usually make jollof rice, which is like a signature African dish. But my favorite is the goat pepper soup.
Okay. All right. Zuri has her last question.
Okay, that sounds good. Honestly, I like spicy stuff. Okay, so since we've already asked you what you would be eating on your last night on Earth, we want to think, okay, COVID has restricted a lot of these restaurants, no more indoor dining. Some restaurants have been closed down due to the financial impact of COVID. So once all the restrictions are lifted, where will you be eating? And you can only choose one place, but this will be a place that either is currently open, will be opened, or has closed down, but like in a perfect world, it would open up again once there was no longer any restrictions.
I'd say Little Lagos is actually in Georgia, actually. Yeah. They give out like a bunch of African dishes. So like some of the African dishes that you haven't had in the United States, they actually make some of them. So yeah, I'd say Little Lagos.
Is that in a section that has like a high concentration of Nigerian immigrants? Like what section of Atlanta is that in?
It's in Brookhaven, around Buckhead area. I think it's in a section of, different immigrants, not just Nigerian immigrants, because it's next to a Chinese restaurant and next to a Mexican restaurant. So it's a lot of immigrants and international people who go there to eat and order food.
Oh, I want to try that. I know exactly what section of Atlanta you're talking about, and I'm definitely going to try that the next time I come down there. Hi, Danny. Just remind our listeners who you are, what school you go to, what's your major, all that.
Yeah, so hello, everyone. Thank you guys, of course, for having me back on the show. My name is Danurius Williams. I go by Danny. I am a senior at Howard University, majoring in environmental science, minoring in political science.
So glad to welcome you back. We have lots to talk about.
So the last 9 months have been quite the roller coaster, emotionally, mentally. globally, within the United States, just been all over the place. And we are nowhere close to seeing the end as of right now. So the last time we spoke with you, Danny, we discussed the response to the forest fires happening in California, changes you noticed within your own community in terms of access to food, and then anything that honestly has been happening within just the environments around you since we last spoke in August. So I know this obviously isn't really a question, but have there been any environmental changes that you've noticed either like in your area that have maybe gotten worse or maybe better since we've last spoken?
And one of the things I will say is that you had mentioned that there was a lot of, and this was happening throughout the country, but it was something that you noticed within your state, the dumping of food because the supply chain was so long and food was getting contaminated. The whole thing with the pig farms and nobody wanting to take things because things were contaminated. I was just curious. That was such an interesting tidbit that you had shared with us.
Yeah. And so I guess the line of transportation between the different farms that would, raise the pigs at different stages in their life cycle, and that would transport different crops, like green beans, cotton, soy, like those have gotten better. But a lot of those farms now are closing down a lot of those production facilities because of COVID. At first, they were closing down, they couldn't provide the services they usually do because all the transportation was backed up. But now, because all of the workers are getting COVID, those factories are being closed down. We're seeing another stall in the production of these foods essential to all of these people's lives. And we're seeing a lot of people being let off, they're being fired because they have COVID. There's no workers' protection. There's no unionization for those kind of workers. A lot of them are minority workers, are not citizens or not natural citizens. And so a lot of them are being fired, laid off. And we're still seeing some kind of wild impact on the food chain, but this time it's not necessarily the transportation, it's COVID. COVID's having a disastrous effect on those production facilities, and Mississippi, being one of the most robust Republican states, isn't really trying to do much about it. They're trying to keep it hush-hush, keep it under the table. And there's actually a lot of lawsuits opening up into these production facilities for lying about their COVID rates, encouraging their workers to lie about their positive or negative status. Even when I came home from DC, DC's been really strict with COVID, knowing that it's the nation's capital. But when I came back home, I was driving home from the airport and we saw all of these parks just full of people, a lot of stores, like big brand name stores like Walmart, Target. Although they have national mask mandates, they're not being well enforced or strictly enforced back home. That was something that really shocked me. So I could really understand why Mississippi it's in the state that it's in.
Can you remind us what city are you from in Mississippi?
Yeah, I'm from Madison, Mississippi.
I was just going to ask, how has testing around you been? I know you're saying like the mandates are basically not being followed and there basically are none. So is there like a lot of testing available around you that's just not being used? Is there barely any testing? Like, do you have to travel more than you would regularly doing just in comparison to DC?
I've been tested, and there is testing available in Mississippi. I wouldn't say widely available because I want to say a lot of the hospitals in Mississippi are either located around Jackson, Mississippi, or they're closer to the coast. And every other kind of medical facility is family practice, like an urgent care center. And so they all have limited COVID testing facilities. Those urgent care centers and those family practice centers aren't seeing the COVID vaccines. Even some of the hospitals in Mississippi, the research hospitals haven't gotten COVID vaccines yet. And it's really only a couple hospitals that are seeing the immunization starting to take place. It's a very slow startup in Mississippi, but you can get tested.
One of the things that they had been projecting was like food scarcity because of these supply chains getting contaminated. And it's interesting because in the series that we had chatted with you about, we also spoke with two farmers. One was a Native American farmer that participates in a heritage farm practice called dryland farming. And then the other one is an African American farmer who actually leases land from a tribe, but he also participates in a different type of heritage farming where essentially it's basically the opposite of factory farming. They're only taking what the land is giving. They see it as more of a stewardship of their land. And he had mentioned that because these like bigger production facilities, because their supply chains are so long and they participate in factory farming and the things had gotten contaminated because of that, that the local governments had to rely on these smaller farms where basically it's just their farm to the supermarket or the local market. I was curious, this may be something that your parents may be paying more attention to. At the supermarket, did you feel like there was less produce or meat, or did you feel like there was a shortage of anything? Or conversely, like if your parents are the type to shop at the farmer's market, which is where you would see more of those local farmers, like I know a lot of them actually, their business increased. They actually flourished in this environment. I was just curious if it was something that you might have noticed or seen.
That was actually a really great question. In Jackson, that's the farmers market we normally go to, is where they normally have the fair. It's the fairgrounds. They normally open up a farmers market there every 2 to 3 weeks. They'll usually broadcast it on the radio, but you can go there now and you see all kinds of stands, sometimes all throughout the week. I was talking to my parents while I was still in DC. They're more frequently going to the farmers markets now because the farmers markets are stocked up. They're having to can and, like you were saying, package their own produce and sell it at these farmers markets. And they're making more money doing that than they would to sell their produce through the supply chain. They're receiving more income, they're doing it themselves. And so that was actually a really great question. I talked to my cousins before coming home too. More traditional Christmas foods, a lot of people are having to give up on because they just don't have the access to them. People are actually starting to prepare like more vegetarian style foods because that's what's available.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting dynamic that they had brought up. So I just thought it was something, because I know you seem like very in tune with like agriculture. So I was like, okay, he probably has an answer for that.
Something that I think is just so interesting, just of where I am, and whenever I go to DC, like to either see my friends or seeing my family, that the areas that are farther away from these grocery stores, from their fresh produce, how there is still, once you're there, there's still no accessibility for those people. Like, I'm a college student. I technically would not be wanting to pay $300 for groceries that are only going to last me a week. But the only way I could possibly get a discount is if I'm an Amazon Prime member, and that's only on certain items. I don't even get like a student discount for trying, which is interesting because I'm like, a lot of these big corporations that are coming into the poorer areas and watching these new big skyscrapers come up, new apartment buildings come up for the demographic that they are trying to reach, watching things like the Publix, which is the grocery store that's all over Atlanta and in the South, and the Walmarts only really being in the areas like where I go to school of, okay, the Walmart's right here, but the closest thing that you're going to get to a Publix is 5 miles away from here.
I got an apartment with one of my fraternal line brothers in Southeast DC, and it's about, I want to say like a 15-minute metro ride from the Howard Shaw area. Where I am in Anacostia, it's still a food desert. The area I'm in is predominantly Black. It's predominantly, POC, and there's no groceries over there. There's, gas stations, there's co-ops, but there's nowhere you could really get fresh produce. But across the river, across the bridge, in the Navy Yard, where the population is more predominantly white, there's almost a grocery store or a Walmart or Whole Foods almost every 3 blocks. And seeing that immediate change in demographic literally across the river. People talk about wrong side of the tracks. It's literally, across the bridge, across the river, that change in food scarcity and food availability. And you're seeing that predominantly based on social class, race, ethnicity, and it's very apparent. And the new Whole Foods, you were talking about by Howard, there's a lot of Howard students that got apartments together up near the school, but even that Whole Foods isn't necessarily what those students need because, Whole Foods is a more overpriced, it's a more expensive grocery store. So when students are going there, they can't normally get as much as what they need or exactly what they need because everything is more expensive. When they reach the counter, they tally everything up. I know one of my good friends constantly is talking about, the difference between shopping at Whole Foods and at Walmart, but he doesn't have a car, he has a bike. And so it's much easier for him to go to the Whole Foods, which is more expensive, and get a couple groceries at a time than go to Walmart where it's less expensive and then bulk up on groceries. So it's, it's bittersweet. We're thankful that it's less of a food desert, but it's not economically more suitable for the area and for the students, the Black community in that area.
One of the things I did notice is that you live off campus. So the last time we had spoken, the assumption was that you were going to be living on campus, right? Living in DC is very expensive. And the last time we spoke, you were like, oh yeah, like I have secured on-campus housing. It's interesting because we did an update with an international student. He was not expecting to ever live off campus. That was never in his plans. He has a full scholarship, room and board, and obviously having to pay out of pocket during an economy where it's very difficult to get off-campus housing is just not the move. I'm just curious for you, with the cost of living in DC, and you were not expecting to live off campus. Can you just catch us up? So Howard shut down, did they say, okay, only 400 people could live there and then you got pushed out, or did they just say nobody could stay on campus?
Howard's actually announcement took a lot of people for a loop because we're like, okay, like you said, I still have housing, I'm good. I just have to worry about food, accessibility, staying safe, staying in my dorm, social distancing, all of that. When they announced, I think it was almost 2 weeks before the semester was actually supposed to start, that they were going to close down the dorms, everybody was on Twitter, like, what's happening? Why would you guys make this announcement so brashly? And especially for a lot of students, that the realization that they're not going to spend maybe their last or second to last year at Howard really, really shook them. And Howard built up a sense of, we're going to guarantee you guys housing, especially students who, like me, and the other two students that I got an apartment with, we have scholarships that cover housing. We were surprised. We were taken aback.
Because you were like, no matter what, I don't know about everybody else, we're going to be on campus. We're going to be good, right? Like, that's what you were thinking, right?
We're somehow, going to see the campus, see the green. And it was definitely threw us for a loop. I don't think there's any Howard student in an apartment by themselves. That's just not possible in DC, especially as a student. So everybody's just banded together and getting a small townhouse, getting a smaller apartment, and just really making it work. That's been one of the surprising things, making that transition from living on a dorm to paying bills, making sure that you're keeping up with your landlord and everything that they're required of. I remember going through the contract with my roommates and we were all sitting there. It was like, wow, we're adults now. This is what we're doing. We're getting an apartment. We're not on campus anymore.
Devon was saying something similar, like the realities of having to pay not just your bills, like if something happens with where you're parked. He was saying his car got towed because he had to park on the street, just like that whole ordeal of having to live off campus.
Oh my gosh. Don't even
parking in DC is not real. It's like one of the worst things. Like, it's worse than parking in New York City. Like,
sometimes you get lucky. You're circling the block and you see a park. By the time you circle the block and come back, it's gone. Literally, that was the only park within a 4-block radius of wherever you were trying to be, wherever you're trying to get to. And even all the parking garages in DC, although there are a lot of parking garages, they're expensive. A lot of them charge $5 every 20 minutes. They don't charge by an hour rate, which is, DC, I think, obnoxious.
Those parking garages be taking your money like that.
Taxing.
Like 20 minutes. And like, I remember I went into the wharf and my friends and I were literally picking up food. We were like, okay, we're just going to go pick up the food, leave. We were in the parking garage for maybe 30 minutes. It was like $15. I was like, I don't even know. Like, I didn't even walk around. Right. Like, I literally waited for food.
With that in mind, you were not expecting to live off campus. You're living in expensive ass DC. It's a different thing to live on campus. It's a certain fixed amount, like you have a meal plan. How did you manage that? Were you able to get an apartment, given that you were sharing with a roommate? I think you said you have 2 roommates. Were you just able to like make it work so that it was around the same amount, or are you coming out paying more living off campus?
It's definitely much more expensive than living on campus. I think if I was to be paying for it myself, if you like broke it down monthly, it'd be almost 4 times as expensive as living on campus. And that goes for all 3 of us. But DC did some kind of like subsidized housing deal with students. And so we got it lowered a little bit. So it's crazy. And then missing the meal plan, we're learning to cook for ourselves. Our favorite thing to do is just find recipes on Blue Apron and print those out, go to the grocery store and really learn how to cook for ourselves, really learn how to survive. We can't just run to the caf, fresh out of class, can't run to the caf. There's no more Soul Food Thursdays. There's no more International Tuesdays. We're really having to come up with this food and this sustenance, all on our own. And, amidst the pandemic, adjusting to online classes, it's really been a lot. It's been a crazy learning experience.
HelloFresh, actually, I'm pretty sure it's like the cheapest out of all of them, but I'm pretty sure they do a student discount. Okay. Do you guys have GoPuff in your area? Do you know what that is? Like in DC? It's very popular in Atlanta, but basically you can order snacks. Like it's like a convenience store, but Uber Eats type.
Okay.
Like that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. So it's like that. And GoPuff, whenever you usually get a delivery, they'll sometimes give you like HelloFresh things and be like, oh, $20 off, like your next month or something like that.
Oh.
My friends like GoPuff a lot, so they have so many of them. I'm like, you might as well just start a HelloFresh.
Right. We don't even pay for Blue Apron. We just go to the grocery store, just print the recipes off from online.
Right.
That's something out of our price range. So we're just going about it, step by step.
I'm curious about that. How much do you end up paying for groceries each week? Mm-hmm. Groceries, eating out, all that.
We normally split groceries. One of my schoolmates, Trinity, she's a Zates at Howard. She's also on the softball team. So their season is getting ready to start up. And so she's having to be very conscious about social distancing and what she's eating. And we all cook for each other. So we've been more so following her diet. And so it's a lot more greens, a lot more vegetables, and we don't eat out as much. So we're definitely going to the store. We're not really using Uber Eats or anything to try and, help her, stay on her diet. And we like to cook in bulk. So no more than I want to say like $200 every 2 weeks, because we're all buying groceries intermittently, re-upping on eggs, milk, juice, a couple of snacks. We're only buying what we use. There's nothing usually left over. Everything is used. Everything is very efficient. It's very cost efficient. It's very meal efficient. There's nothing ever wasted. We proportion everything to make sure that everything's lasting as it should. But yeah, no more than I want to say like $200 over the span of 2 weeks.
That's a pretty good budget. I don't even know how many people you're feeding, but that's pretty good. Okay, so definitely. COVID-19 has been the catalyst for many events that have occurred over the last 9 months within the US and around the globe, such as protests and marching for Black lives and other demonstrations of civil unrest. Social media has been the stage for many of these events for people who either cannot attend or, finding a way to connect, everybody being inside, things such as the Versus events, some of which have resulted in being super spreader events like the Jeezy and Gucci Mane event that happened in Atlanta. How have, if any, these occurrences that have been happening affected you or changed your perspective?
I wouldn't say I or any of my friends or anyone close to me has been exposed to anything like that. Again, DC is very strict. We do responsibly go out after, like, we all do well on a test or an exam. We'll go out and get brunch. But there's parties no larger than 6 anywhere in DC. Everywhere, social distance, even standing in line outside. The line's too long. They just tell you to leave.
In Mississippi, when you go to like the supermarket or the pharmacy or Target or just, is it kind of like a crapshoot if people have on masks? In New Jersey, all of the stores say, must have a mask to enter. Is it the same way in Mississippi? And then when you go to these places, are there people legit walking around with no masks?
Yes. It's the same thing. They have the mask mandate signs outside of Target, Kroger, Walmart, but people walk in without a mask. They don't have employees standing at the front saying, hey, put your mask on. doesn't exist. It's an anomaly.
Ooh. We have our grandma living with us right now, and she lives in Florida. And some of the things that she says, I realized Florida really is high risk, because she was like, it's so interesting people walk around on the street with masks on. I was like, interesting that you think that's interesting. Like, that's really the norm. But if you're going to the store and Target, the expectation is that maybe you probably should wear a mask, but like on the street, like it's free game.
Atlanta definitely has a similar vibe. It's like depending on what part of Atlanta you're in is how you see people outside. It's definitely been depending on where you are. Because being now in New Jersey, where there are literally people at the door handing out masks, making sure that like the things that you're touching have been wiped down, as the state, like they're taking it very, very seriously.
They've closed down indoor dining in New York City.
And indoor dining, I'm going to be very honest, was when people first started doing it, I was like, I don't know, like it's summertime, like maybe you can get away with it, be outside. Now, like when it's like the winter time and like I went, it was my friend's birthday and she wanted to have a dinner in New York City, and they have like their mandates and everything, like all their staff are wearing masks, all that stuff. But the restaurant, it was still at maybe 50% capacity, which is still a lot of people. Nobody who's eating is wearing a mask because like you're eating. At the same time, the germs are still all in the air. Like everybody's still here in the same confined space doing this. So it doesn't make any sense. So it's really interesting to see how every place I've been has really been treating these mandates of masks, sanitizer, you can't come in, kind of stuff like that. So
New Jersey is a completely different vibe.
We are officially in the holiday season, 5 days until Christmas, 11 days, 12 days until the New Year. Sorry, I can't count. My friends and extended family have been unable to celebrate in the manner that they usually do. So how has COVID impacted your holiday season so far?
Normally, when I'm coming back home from college, I'm trying to see my aunts, my cousins, my uncles, everybody I miss. We have a very tight-knit family, both on my mom's side and on my dad's side. And so it's been very different. It's been a very lackluster holiday. I'm not able to be out and about with my cousins. I know even in Mississippi, they try sometimes if it gets cold enough to set up like an indoor ice skating rink in one of the stadiums. This year it's too warm, global warming. We love that. But I know for Christmas, my family's planning to do a really big Zoom Christmas Day type thing. Everybody's going to be on screen, we'll at least be able to interact and say hello, catch up with everybody some kind of way. Same thing for New Year's. My family actually did that again for Thanksgiving. My family actually has a good bit of medical professionals, especially like military medical professionals. So they're taking it very seriously. My cousins, my family, we're all taking COVID very seriously. A lot of my family lives with, like great aunts or great uncles. There's a lot of older generations of people that we would literally endanger going to the grocery store without a mask, going to the park without a mask, the grocery store and the park's literally full of people without masks. And so we're having to do our due diligence. We love and we respect these people. So, we're having to abide by these rules. It's not the holiday we wanted it to be. I still call my cousins, every day. We'll FaceTime. I just got the PlayStation 5, thank God. It took me forever to get it. We'll play Call of Duty.
Congrats.
We'll play Mortal
that had
Kombat.
to be craziness.
I was going to say, everybody who was out there trying to get that PS5, it was
and the Xbox too. They just dropped the new Xbox
it was
as well.
bored.
So that was also crazy.
Listen, back in the day, I wouldn't even say back in the day. Last year, this is the type of stuff that would get people jacked in the parking lot at an electronics store. Holiday time.
Rob.
Looking towards the future in 2021 in the less than a month, it's 10 days, 11 days. Do you have any resolutions or hopes for the new year?
Let's see. Hopes. First, I'm applying to law schools right now.
Oh, yay.
So, most of my applications are in.
Good luck.
Writing a couple last minute essays. I'm hoping with the new Biden administration, their mission to have a 100-day mask mandate, I'm hoping, that is successful. Intern in DC this summer, hopefully. I've also been sending in those applications. I've been hopeful for a turnaround in the outlook on COVID, making lasting social progress. as far as Black Lives Matter and equitable development as far as those things are concerned, as well as climate change. I'm hoping that the Biden administration can really get the whole country to start doing things, like recycling and composting, start doing the little things surrounding sustainability that will eventually move on to national initiatives. And I definitely have a very hopeful outlook for 2021, especially, after Trump. Sky's the limit.
And I'll just say one thing about that. We did have a conversation. We actually spoke with Ms. Howard. We were right after the Biden-Harris win. We had a conversation with Ms. Howard because she's an AKA. Also, we had it with the immediate past SGA president from Spelman because Stacey Abrams was SGA president when she was at Spelman. So Nia Page was the person that we spoken to. She just graduated from Spelman last year. And while she was at Spelman, so like all of that like whole HBCU initiative, Miss Howard had participated in, that was her brainchild. Like she helped to create that. And Biden hopes to remain engaged with HBCUs. So she's doing that. And she's also in graduate school. So I would say for you, if you feel like you want the Biden administration, like I'm sure they're going to have a whole climate change. They believe in science. So I'm sure if there's something that you would be interested, because literally like what she did started with a conversation when the candidates came to visit Spelman. That's how she explained it to us. It started with a conversation. HBCUs helped get him elected. Let's be clear. That was our time to ask for these things.
So we are coming to our final question. And as a former guest, you know that we usually ask, what would you be eating on your last night on Earth? But because we already know that, we wanted to know, COVID has impacted the restaurant industry. Indoor dining, like we were just talking about, has been restricted or banned in a lot of places. Some restaurants have had to close permanently due to the financial impact. So once all the restrictions are lifted, you're in a perfect world. Every restaurant that was open before COVID is now open again. Where will you be eating? You can only choose one place because everywhere is open and everybody's trying to get at the top of this reservation list.
One place I really want to eat. You know what? I think I'm more pressed about it than anything because it's something I necessarily can't. It's not like I can't eat it, but it's a lot more expensive. I love Caribbean food. There's a Caribbean spot in Jackson. And oxtails. There's a shortage on oxtails. And it's definitely like $7-8 more for like an oxtail platter. And when I got home, that hurt me because, I was running low. I looked online and I saw the prices were the same. I was like, okay, thank God I can go get some oxtails, get a beef patty, and then I can go home. And that was I already told my parents, I was like, okay, I want to do this. Yes. And I got there, threw my mask on, ran inside. I was like, and I looked at the menu price and I was like, and it was definitely $8 more than they said it would be.
Which is a significant increase.
That hurt me.
A very significant increase. What is this place called?
There's this Caribbean place called Zach's in Jackson, Mississippi.
I have a question. I want to know for the holidays, since this is a holiday episode, I want to know what is the one holiday dish that is made during a holiday season that you cannot live without, and it has to be only one.
This is more of a summer type dessert. My mom makes amazing blueberry cobbler, so I'm definitely looking forward to that in the next 5-6 days. And I normally eat it until my stomach hurts, and then I just retreat to my room and recuperate. So it's definitely a very Southern style dessert, and so I can't wait.
Does she make it from scratch?
She makes it from scratch. She makes the crust and everything herself. She's very adept on fresh ingredients. Every summer, we go pick blackberries, we go pick blueberries at the patches in Mississippi, and we freeze them in our fridge, and they stay good. We have an ice box in the garage, and it's super cold. It literally becomes a brick of blueberries. But when they unthaw, we let it unthaw naturally. We just set it on the counter in a little dish. They unthaw, and they still taste just as fresh. No freezer burner or anything. So definitely fresh everything. Try and make everything at home.
Thank you so much for joining us for Season 1 of IDE's Impolite Conversation podcast. You can stay connected with us on Twitter and Instagram at Icon Dinner. You can also watch selected video episodes of the podcast on our YouTube page. Stay connected with us for updates on when season 2 will begin.